The P-38 Lightning, America's most misunderstood fighter. The machine that defied convention. It began on a windswept runway in Burbank, California, long before the world was swallowed by the fires of global war. The year was 1939, and gathered around a peculiar aircraft were engineers, test pilots, and military observers, all staring at something that seemed to defy every rule of aircraft design. This was no ordinary fighter plane. Where traditional fighters had one engine, this had two, mounted on twin booms that stretched backward like the prongs of a tuning fork. Where other aircraft had a conventional tail, this machine ended in twin vertical stabilizers connected by a horizontal bar. And where pilots expected to sit behind an engine, this cockpit sat in a smooth, central nacelle between the engines, offering visibility unlike anything before it. Some observers stood in silent awe. Others muttered that it looked like a design error, a committee's compromise, a machine cobbled together from spare parts. But no one, absolutely no one, could deny one undeniable truth. The P-38 Lightning didn't look like it was built by human hands. It looked like it had been sent back from the future. Its twin Allison V1710 engines hummed with a deep, throaty resonance, like a predator clearing its throat before the hunt. Its elongated nose stretched forward like an arrow pointed directly at destiny. And when the propellers began to spin in opposite directions, counter-rotating to eliminate torque, the entire machine seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. The ground crews, those men who would come to know her intimately, gave her a nickname that would stick forever, the Fork-tailed Devil. The pilots, with their mix of excitement and apprehension, simply called her the Lightning. But destiny, cruel, unpredictable destiny, would call her something else entirely. America's most misunderstood fighter. Part 1, Kelly Johnson's Radical Vision. To understand the Lightning, you must first understand the mind that conceived her. Clarence Kelly Johnson was only 28 years old when he began designing the P-38, but he was already gaining a reputation as one of aviation's most brilliant and stubborn engineers. Working at Lockheed's small facility in Burbank, California, Johnson had a problem to solve, one that seemed impossible. The United States Army Air Corps had issued a specification in 1937 that was unlike anything ever requested. They wanted a high-altitude interceptor capable of reaching 360 miles per hour at 20,000 feet, with a climb rate that could reach that altitude in 6 minutes. For context, most fighters of the era struggled to reach 300 miles per hour, and climb rates were measured in double-digit minutes, not single digits. It was an absurd requirement. A fantasy. Or so everyone thought. Kelly Johnson didn't think so. He gathered his small team and began sketching concepts that other designers would have dismissed as impractical. A twin-engine design would provide the power needed, but how do you keep such a design lightweight and maneuverable? How do you concentrate firepower without it being scattered across the wings? The answer came in a flash of innovation. Mount the engines on twin booms, leaving the center fuselage free for a pressurized cockpit, concentrated nose-mounted armament, and streamlined aerodynamics. The propellers would counter-rotate to eliminate the torque issues that plagued twin-engine aircraft. Turbo superchargers would allow the engines to maintain power at high altitudes where other aircraft gasped for air. On paper, it was revolutionary. In practice, it would prove to be both brilliant and cursed. The prototype, designated the XP-38, was completed in late 1938. On January 27, 1939, test pilot Lieutenant Ben Kelsey climbed into the cockpit for the first flight. When he advanced the throttles, ground crews felt the runway shake beneath their feet. The Lightning lifted off smoothly, climbed like a homesick angel, and demonstrated handling characteristics that left observers speechless. She was fast. Unbelievably fast. She was agile. Shockingly agile for a twin-engine design. She was everything the Army had asked for, and more. But then came the demonstration that would haunt the Lightning's early reputation. 2 weeks after the first flight, Lieutenant Kelsey attempted a transcontinental speed record flight from California to New York. The Lightning performed beautifully across the vast American landscape, shattering speed records as she roared eastward. But as Kelsey approached Mitchell Field in New York for landing, disaster struck. At high altitude, ice began forming in the carburetor intakes. The engines coughed, sputtered, and lost power. Kelsey fought the controls as the prototype descended too fast, too steep. He almost made the runway. Almost. The XP-38 crashed just short of the field, sliding across a golf course in a shower of sparks and torn metal. Kelsey survived, but the prototype was destroyed. Newspapers across America ran headlines declaring the Lightning a failure. Too fast, too complex, too dangerous. Critics called it a waste of taxpayer money. Some military officials wondered if the entire concept should be abandoned. But the Army Air Corps saw something different. They had witnessed 7 hours of near-perfect flight. They had seen speed and altitude capabilities that no other fighter could match. They had glimpsed the future of aerial combat. Despite the crash, despite the criticism, despite the doubts, the Army ordered 13 service test P-38s. The Lightning would get her chance to prove herself. But the road ahead would be far more difficult than anyone imagined. Part 2, rushed into a war America wasn't ready for. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burned, and with it burned America's illusions of remaining isolated from the global conflict. Within hours, the United States was at war with Japan. Within days, war with Germany and Italy followed. The P-38 Lightning, still being refined and tested, was suddenly thrust into frontline service with an urgency that left little room for the careful training and development it desperately needed. Young pilots, many with only basic flight training, found themselves assigned to Lightning squadrons. These men had trained on simple, forgiving aircraft like the PT-17 Stearman and AT-6 Texan. Some had limited experience in single-engine fighters like the P-40 Warhawk. And then they saw the P-38's cockpit. It was overwhelming. Where a P-40 had perhaps a dozen primary instruments and controls, the Lightning's cockpit bristled with gauges, switches, levers, and indicators. Twin throttles for twin engines. Twin mixture controls. Twin propeller pitch controls. Turbo supercharger controls that required constant attention and adjustment. Intercooler shutters. Oil cooler shutters. A control wheel instead of a stick. Trim tabs for 3 axes. And speed. Terrifying, exhilarating, deadly speed. At cruise power, the Lightning was faster than most fighters' maximum speed. At full power, she could reach speeds that approached the sound barrier in dives, speeds at which the very air itself began to behave in strange, dangerous ways. Training accidents mounted. Pilots forgot to switch fuel tanks and ran one side dry, causing violent yaws. Pilots mismanaged the turbo superchargers and detonated engines. Pilots pushed the aircraft into high-speed dives and discovered something that would nearly destroy the Lightning's reputation entirely. Part 3, The Curse of Compressibility. Lieutenant James Wade was diving on a target during a training exercise over California when it happened. At 25,000 feet, he pushed the nose down into a steep dive, building speed rapidly. The Lightning accelerated beautifully, 400 miles per hour, 450, 500. And then, suddenly, the aircraft began to shake violently. Wade pulled back on the control wheel. Nothing. He pulled harder, using both hands, straining with everything he had. Still nothing. The nose stayed down. The earth rushed up. The altimeter unwound like a broken clock. At the last possible moment, perhaps 3,000 feet above the ground, the shaking eased, the controls responded, and Wade hauled the Lightning out of the dive with such force that he grayed out from the G-forces. He landed shaking, drenched in sweat, convinced he had just escaped death by seconds. But Wade wasn't alone. Reports began flooding in from other pilots describing the same terrifying phenomenon. In high-speed dives, usually above 500 miles per hour, the P-38 would begin to shake, then the nose would tuck under even more steeply, and the controls would lock solid. Pilots described it as if invisible hands had seized the aircraft and were dragging it toward the ground. Some pilots recovered. Many didn't. The crashes mounted. Training squadrons lost aircraft and pilots at an alarming rate. Rumors spread through air bases like wildfire. Lightning dives are death traps. She locks up and won't respond. Don't chase a German downhill, you won't come back. Combat squadrons in Europe began reporting that German pilots had figured out the Lightning's weakness. When attacked by P-38s, Luftwaffe fighters would simply push into a steep dive, knowing that many American pilots feared following. The Germans would escape, and the Lightning pilots would be left impotent with rage, watching their targets flee. The Lightning's reputation, already fragile, began to shatter. But what was causing this deadly phenomenon? The answer lay at the cutting edge of aerodynamic science, a phenomenon that wouldn't be fully understood until after the war: compressibility. As the Lightning dove at high speeds, local airflow over parts of the wing and tail approached the speed of sound. At these transonic speeds, shock waves formed, disrupting airflow and causing the tail to lose effectiveness. The center of pressure shifted, pushing the nose down even further. The control surfaces became ineffective, leaving pilots helpless. The P-38 wasn't flawed, it was simply encountering physics that the world's engineers barely understood. The Lightning was literally flying faster than contemporary aerodynamic theory could explain. Lockheed's engineers, led by Kelly Johnson, worked frantically. They added dive flaps under the wings that could be extended electrically in high-speed dives, increasing drag and helping pilots recover control. They modified the control systems. They published new flight manuals with strict speed limitations and recovery procedures. Slowly, painfully slowly, the monster was tamed. But the damage to the Lightning's reputation, especially in Europe, was already done. Part 4, Redemption in the Pacific. If the European theater misunderstood the P-38 Lightning, the Pacific theater worshipped her like a deity of war. Here, in the vast blue emptiness of the Pacific Ocean, the Lightning's unique capabilities weren't just advantages, they were necessities for survival. Consider the challenge facing American fighter pilots in 1942 and 1943, targets separated by hundreds of miles of open ocean, no landmarks for navigation, no emergency landing sites, and enemies who controlled much of the airspace. A single-engine fighter that suffered even minor damage faced a long swim home, assuming the pilot survived the water landing. The P-38 changed this calculus entirely. 2 engines meant redundancy. Countless pilots limped home on one engine after the other was shot out, damaged, or failed mechanically. These men owed their lives to Kelly Johnson's twin-engine design. Long range meant flexibility. With external drop tanks, the Lightning could fly missions of 1,500 miles or more, reaching targets that other fighters could only dream of protecting or attacking. Concentrated nose armament meant devastating firepower. 4.50 caliber machine guns and 120mm cannon, all mounted in the nose, created a cone of fire that could shred a Japanese bomber in seconds. Unlike wing-mounted guns that required convergence at specific ranges, the Lightning's guns hit exactly where the pilot aimed, at any distance. The aces of the Pacific recognized these qualities immediately. Major Richard Bong, America's highest-scoring ace with 40 confirmed victories, flew the P-38 exclusively. He developed tactics that exploited the Lightning's strengths, high-speed slashing attacks, using superior dive speed to engage and disengage at will, and relying on the incredible visibility from the central cockpit to spot enemies first. Major Thomas McGuire, second only to Bong with 38 victories, pushed the Lightning to its absolute limits, developing aggressive tactics that traded safety for killing efficiency. Colonel Charles MacDonald, the third-ranking ace with 27 victories, commanded entire squadrons of Lightnings and turned them into highly effective hunter-killer teams. These men weren't just pilots. They were artists, and the P-38 was their brush. The Japanese grew to fear the distinctive twin-boom silhouette. They called it 2 planes, 1 pilot, a description that captured both confusion and respect. When Lightnings appeared, Japanese pilots knew they faced an opponent with advantages in speed, firepower, and range. But the mission that would etch the P-38 into the pages of history forever came on April 18, 1943. Operation Vengeance. Part 5, The Assassination of Admiral Yamamoto. American intelligence intercepted and decoded a Japanese message revealing that Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of the Pearl Harbor attack and commander of the combined fleet, would be flying from Rabaul to Bougainville on a routine inspection tour. The message provided the date, time, route, and even the type of aircraft. It was an opportunity too valuable to miss. But it was also a mission that seemed impossible. The target area was over 400 miles from the nearest American base at Guadalcanal, out and back, over 800 miles of open ocean. The attacking force would need to fly at extremely low altitude to avoid radar detection, navigate with pinpoint accuracy without radio communication, arrive exactly on time to intercept Yamamoto's flight, and then fight their way home with Japanese fighters pursuing. Only one American fighter could attempt such a mission, the P-38 Lightning. 18 Lightnings were selected. 16 would fly as the main attack force, and 2 would serve as spares in case of mechanical issues. The pilots were briefed on the target, though the mission's true significance was kept secret from all but a few. On the morning of April 18, the Lightnings took off and headed northwest, skimming just above the wave tops to stay below Japanese radar. For over 2 hours, they flew in radio silence, navigating by compass and dead reckoning alone, a navigational feat that would be considered remarkable even today. As they approached Bougainville, the Lightning pilots climbed to altitude and spotted their target, 2 Mitsubishi G4M Betty bombers carrying Yamamoto and his staff, escorted by 60 fighters. Captain Thomas Lanphier and Lieutenant Rex Barber broke from formation and attacked. In the chaotic dogfight that followed, both Betty bombers were shot down. Yamamoto's aircraft crashed in the jungle, and the admiral, the man who had orchestrated Japan's opening victories, was killed. The Lightnings turned for home. One was shot down by Zeros, but the rest made the long flight back to Guadalcanal, landing with fuel tanks nearly dry. The mission was a complete success. Japan's most capable naval commander was dead, killed by American fighters in a mission that showcased everything the P-38 Lightning could do when properly employed. News of Yamamoto's death stunned Japan and boosted American morale across the Pacific. The Lightning had proven her worth in blood. Part 6, the European struggle continues. But while the Pacific celebrated the Lightning's triumphs, Europe remained skeptical. The cold, high-altitude environment of European combat exposed the P-38's remaining weaknesses mercilessly. At 30,000 feet over Germany, cockpit heating systems proved inadequate. Pilots flew missions in Arctic-like conditions, their hands and feet going numb, their visibility obscured by frost forming on the inside of canopies. The Allison engines, designed for moderate climates, struggled in the frigid temperatures of high-altitude Europe. Coolant systems froze. Oil thickened. Engines detonated without warning. And the German pilots, flying agile, well-designed fighters like the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and Focke-Wulf Fw-190, found the P-38 heavy and predictable in turning combat. The Lightning's large size made it an easy target to spot. Its complexity made it maintenance-intensive. Its quirks made it unforgiving. American pilots grumbled. Some outright refused Lightning assignments, requesting transfers to P-47 Thunderbolt or P-51 Mustang units. Squadron commanders blamed losses on the aircraft itself, and reports filtered back to the United States questioning whether the P-38 belonged in the European theater at all. But even as she struggled in air-to-air combat, the Lightning performed missions that no other fighter could accomplish. Every reconnaissance photo of Normandy before D-Day? Taken by camera-equipped F-5 variants of the P-38. Every long-range bomber escort mission before the P-51 Mustang arrived in numbers? Flown by P-38s, shepherding bombers deep into Germany and bringing them home. Every pilot who survived an engine failure over enemy territory and made it back on one engine? Saved by the Lightning's twin-engine design. The P-38 was misunderstood, yes. Controversial, absolutely. But useless? Never. Part 7, the Lightning's Twilight. By late 1944, a new star had risen in the European skies, the P-51 Mustang. Sleek, fast, and powered by the magnificent Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Mustang offered everything the European theater wanted: high-altitude performance, agility in dogfights, long range, and simplicity that made it easy to fly and maintain. The Lightning, by comparison, began to look obsolete. Orders were cancelled. Production lines slowed. Squadrons transitioned to Mustangs. The headlines that once celebrated the Lightning now focused on her successor. Pilots moved on. Engineers shifted to new projects. Hangars that once echoed with the distinctive sound of Allison engines fell silent. But somewhere, deep in a jungle airfield in New Guinea, or along a coral runway on some Pacific island whose name has been forgotten, a Lightning still sat with her silver skin reflecting the tropical sun. A survivor of a war that had demanded everything. A machine that had saved lives, won battles, and carried the desperate hopes of her pilots on two booming engines through skies where death waited around every cloud. Closing, the legacy of a misunderstood legend. Decades later, when the surviving pilots, gray-haired, slower, but still sharp-eyed, were interviewed for history projects and documentaries, they all said variations of the same thing. The P-38 saved my life more times than I can count. She could fly home with one engine shot out, trailing smoke and burning oil, but still flying. She could outrun almost anything in the sky when pointed downhill. She could escort, intercept, photograph, strafe, dive bomb, a true multi-role fighter before the world even had a term for such versatility. Today, only a handful of airworthy P-38 Lightnings remain. They appear at airshows, carefully maintained by dedicated owners who understand their historical significance. But when one of these rare survivors roars to life, when those twin Allison engines cough, catch, and settle into their distinctive asynchronous thunder, when the propellers begin to spin and the silver aircraft lifts its twin tails into the air, you can still feel something. A vibration. A presence. A reminder of the days when she was feared by enemies, doubted by friends, misunderstood by commanders, and loved by the pilots who trusted their lives to her. Because the saga of the P-38 Lightning is more than just the story of an aircraft. It's the saga of every soldier, every pilot, every machine that was judged before it was understood. Criticized before it was mastered. Doubted before it proved its worth. And like the men who flew her into impossible missions over endless oceans and hostile skies, she refused to break. She refused to stop. She refused to be forgotten.